Today, I have an update from myself and two of the people.us volunteers. But first,
There's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's in. Drew, come roll with the gang gang. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up with. Drew Yang Gang, that's who I hooked up. Yo, there's no place to hide now that he's arrived. I'm saying he ain't playing now with this campaign. Bang, dang, it's in. Drew, come roll with the gang gang.
hello, nerds.
Hello, nerd!
Hello, nerds.
All right. So we have an update on Of the People, but before we do that, why don't we do a quick round of introductions? Sam, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then Ian, you do the same.
Sure. My name's Sam. More importantly, this is Logan, my son. He's 9 months old. He's going to be hanging out with us today. I am a software engineer. I know Tom and Ian from having worked at a startup with them and having worked with Tom prior to that at a company. And I'm just excited to be a part of the team.
Well, welcome back, Sam. Good to see you, buddy. Ian?
Yeah, I'm Ian. I do not have a child with me, but I have artifacts of my kids right behind me that you might be able to see. I write code every once in a while, and Sam and I worked together back in the day, and also Tom. So write a lot of the code for Of the People, and happy to be on the team.
Yeah, all right. So now let's do a recap of a little bit of the history of OTP. I think, Ian, you and I started talking about it around June of last year, because I think it was like around Independence Day, right before.
I remember because I was like camping around June, and you called me early in the morning, and I was still asleep. You say, "Hey, where are you? We're supposed to be meeting."
Yeah, I mean, that does highlight that all of us are volunteering, and so we all have day jobs, children, spouses, other projects that we're working on. But I'm glad that, I guess we're 9 months into it now, roughly. And the concept has evolved a little bit in that it started out as, hey, we want to help people get their first 1,000 supporters who are running for Congress. And it was like, yeah, it's like Kickstarter for Congress. And it had, it was like, yeah, let's do this. And there was a lot of people on Twitter that were encouraging me to do it for sure and saying, hey, this is a cool idea. And then I think as we did some research and we talked to folks like Eric Sanchez and, Andrew Landry, some people who have pretty good experience in running campaigns. And one of the things I kept hearing from a variety of folks is like, why aren't you doing local races, local candidates? And I think initially I was like, well, that's not that as exciting as like Congress. It seems so much more sexy and cool to put people in Congress. But I guess through just a few months ago, we kind of made this pivot or evolution. And part of it was predicated on the fact that it's hard to get elected to Congress as a first-time candidate. Like you hear examples like AOC, but it's not common for someone to be a bartender and then show up in Congress like 6 months later. And then the second thing was that 80% of sitting Congress people were in locally elected offices prior. And then the third thing was that all parties, use these local candidates as their kind of D1 NCAA kind of scouting territory. And I guess the other thing was that these local elections are also often won by just a few hundred votes. and those typical campaign budgets are like $1,000, $2,000. They're not 5 million, which is typically what you might need to if you want to be like a congressperson in a competitive state. So I'm curious to kind of get your guys' thoughts as you've been on this journey. For me, I feel like we're in step 1.5 of maybe a 10-step journey, but maybe Ian, you can start and then we'll go to Sam. How are you feeling about from that call when you were camping in June to now?
Yeah, I mean, this has been probably for like side projects that I've done throughout my career. This is definitely the one that has kind of been the most consistent and kind of, well thought out, and we're actually, consistently making progress. So I think that's been a lot of fun to kind of be a part of, and also to know that, as long as we're pushing the ball forward like every week, I think that's how we're going to be successful here. So, and then as far as, every project's always going to change. So we had an idea when we started. It was this, get people to Congress, like you said. But I think we all knew that what was going to happen is that we were going to start building something and then, learn some new stuff and then start pivoting kind of around that. So I fully embrace the, hey, let's go down this path. We know how we got from where we started to where we are now. We don't necessarily know where we're going, but we have an idea right now, and we're going to go forward and test those out. So it's exciting to have kind of something out there now with the website.
Mm-hmm.
People can sign up. We can start seeing, how people are using this, and then we can learn from that and go from there.
I think it is one of the benefits of being a mission-driven project. Like, we're not a traditional tech startup that needs to raise a bunch of investor capital and try and show the crazy revenue or anything like that. And we're not a full-time nonprofit to the extent that, if we're kind of taking a little while to kind of find our way, we feel terrible. Like, we spend, a little bit of time on the weekends and maybe a little bit during the week at night. And if we just help one candidate get one more donor, in a way, it's like, hey, we did our part.
Yep.
Sam, how about you, man? What's your journey been like so far?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of echo the sentiment. It's been great to see the forward momentum. I think it's Logan clearly.
Yeah, he's like, it's been amazing.
Yeah, and I think there's this really nice thing that happens when your time is scarce, when you're working on something. It just makes the outcome and the effort so much more pure. Like, you've got to use every second you can allocate to it to just do exactly what's necessary. So that's been kind of a fun thing. With respect to kind of the shift to local, it makes a ton of sense to me as somebody who recently moved from the kind of liberal capital of Seattle to a suburb that isn't actually a separate county that's much more conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I've all of a sudden been thrust into a different type of local election that I feel remarkably more involved in. Because in Seattle, it was kind of like, do I really need to vote for the candidate that I align with? No, because I align with that liberal group, so they'll probably get elected. I admit that apathy is not a good thing for that perspective. But now in this more conservative county, it's crucial that I get in there and vote and support candidates. So this is one way I can do that. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And I bet the people that you're going to vote for will win or lose by, less than a few thousand votes, probably a very modest amount. So every vote really does count. And who knows, some of those people you're voting for, I think that was part of the theory of OTP, is that some people hearing this may be like, well, why do I care if a particular candidate wins in some state far away from me? Well, that candidate, if you really like them and you think they're going places and you help them get their early start, they may end up in Congress. They may end up in the Senate or beyond. And so wouldn't it be cool if there were a way to discover, search, and browse candidates that share your interest. So maybe at this point, I'll do a quick screen share. We'll take a look at our baby so far, and then we'll talk about baby status, and then we're going to shift into actually like a working meeting. So if you're watching this, it's going to get a little bit inside baseball, but this is the Nerds for Humanity channel. So we're allowed to get a little nerdy. Let's see, OTP. So we're going to go to ofthepeople.us. And it's right here. Okay, I think you guys can see it. So this is, if you haven't gone there before and you are running for office, you absolutely should click this button here, promote your candidacy, because it's free and you're just going to get more exposure. And actually, we've been running some ad campaigns promoting OTP, and we'll continue to do that. So if you're listed here, you may find your next donor or your next volunteer or your next supporter, because if you are not a candidate, but you are someone who's interested in supporting future leaders, you can click on this one. Oh, dude, Alan must have, did he just start? I think Alan Lee just joined minutes ago, because before it was Fry who was the latest one. That's so cool. Dude, we hit number 13.
All right.
Woo! Okay, sorry. So as you can tell, we're very excited for our little baby to have our 13th candidate. So we got Alan, Fry, Sheridan, Andrew, Austin, Liam, Allie. Allie's actually going to be a guest on the Nerds Show tomorrow. So that's another benefit. If you're thinking of running for office, I will for sure prioritize you and make sure you get a lot of exposure on the Nerds for Humanity show. You've got Erica Rhodes, Eric Storson, Amy Washburn, Yenny DeRoche, who was also on the Nerd Show just, I think, 2 weeks ago. Ryan Stark and Adriana Aviles. Now, what's cool is we have this tagging capability. So we're not quite there, but you might be at a point where you're like, I don't know, they all seem interesting to me. But let's say you're super interested in basic income, like that's your thing. So you can click that tag, and now we're going to show all the candidates who themselves have tagged UBI as a priority of theirs. And you see Austin and Liam and Alan, Eric. Oh, I see the first bug. So this is a test profile that was unpublished. So now we're going to go into our working session.
Okay. I think I know what happened there.
You feel me? Yeah.
Yeah.
You
didn't show up in the candidate list, right?
Correct. I created, and just for people to know, like, if you wanted to see, like, well, what's it like setting up a profile? You just go to login, and you can then, I usually use my Google account.
Should we add Twitter there, by the way?
That would be nice. I think we said we just start with the Goog. And then you see here, edit profile. And then you just add, like, so if you're thinking of running, you don't need to add that much stuff, right? And then you say, make me a candidate. And then you'd be on that list. And again, it's completely free. Now, if you're a supporter, you could click on the candidate, and then you see you have a link to their official campaign site. You could favorite them. He's trying to add multiple links.
Those are some interesting tags there.
Yeah, he's trying to add, I think Alan's trying to add links to his Facebook group. So maybe that's an opportunity for us to, like, was it like Linktree or something, some way for them to add more stuff.
Yeah.
And then he's got his shtick. So that's Alan, who is the other thing is, like, right now we have them enter their postal code, but we'll make that kind of more human readable. And then eventually you could maybe sort by distance from you. So you'd be like, okay, these 15 are interesting, but is there anyone in the Northwest? And right now, unless you're really good with postal codes, it would be harder for you to do it. That's the other thing you could do is you could do multiple tags. So you could say, I want someone who's for both basic income and Medicare for all. And you see Austin, Liam, and Allie show up. So that's a little bit of a demo of OTP. I'm pretty proud of what we've done so far with our all volunteer effort. And we should acknowledge there's other people that are working on this who weren't able to join us, like Ken from Demo Draft and Brian from Demo Draft, but we'll have to have them on in a future episode. So if we kind of zoom out, you want to discuss like our way forward. Before we do that, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters. So let me give a quick shout out to them because they have been donating. Sugar Sweet, Eric Sanchez is a VIP patron. All of the money does not go, it goes only to this project. It does not go to any of our pockets. It goes to the email services. It goes to hosting. It goes to the domain costs, registration. It goes to marketing the site. So Sugar Sweet, Eric Sanchez, Byram Hess, Aaron Sarnat, John Perino, Rob Tohir, Rock Out, Thrive, Tony, Timothy, Elizabeth, Trickle Up, Jessica, Brian, Iggy, Omar, and Steph. So thank you to all of you who have been supporting us, some of them since the beginning, for now 9 months. And I'm sure they were wondering, because for the first 6 months, there wasn't a whole lot to see. But I'm glad you guys now can see, we are actually working and making stuff happen.
Getting
Ian.
the first thing up always takes a little bit.
Yeah.
But then we can start moving. So, and I think we're in that phase where we can start moving a little faster.
So let's talk about what we want to do going forward. And then for those of you who are watching live, if you have questions for us, put it in the chat. But my first question for Ian and Sam is, what are you excited about in terms of what we can do to grow this project and make OTP even more awesome?
I think I'm excited kind of to have, first of all, just to have this thing up and to see how people are using it. And I mean, honestly, the thing that excites me most is that we have unlimited runway to figure things out. In most projects, you have to, you're really pressed for time. So it's almost relaxing to work on this because it's like, oh, let's do this and see how it goes. And I think, I think also we're probably going to be, if we have a moment to where we, might kind of catch some fire, it will be right around a election season. And so I'm looking forward to kind of figuring out, okay, when is that first kind of election season that we are going to target, and then what does it look like around there? What works, what doesn't, and kind of going from there.
Yeah. Sam, what about you? What keeps you excited?
I'm excited about, one thing I'm excited about is the ability for us to or for people to potentially create profiles for people that they're interested in supporting in elections. Reason being is, a busy candidate can only do so much to kind of generate visibility. Oh, you're okay, bud. And I think it would be great if people could basically say, hey, look, I live in this area of the country. There's this upcoming local election, and here's somebody I'm really excited about, to just help amplify the message of those candidates that people are excited about. And Logan clearly agrees. He's in stronger. He's got your back all the time, Sam. He does.
That's the father-son connection. Yeah, so I agree. I think there are two features that I'm excited about. One is allowing our volunteers, our team, to create profiles for candidates and then say, hey, so and so, we've already created like, I give you an example, like there's a Yang Gang candidate, Rev Wendy in DC. I've been bugging her to create a profile forever. She's busy. She's got a lot going on. She has, she might not realize how easy it is. I'd rather just say, oh, I actually created you a profile. Here's a link that will let you claim it and add and edit it. Or if you don't like it, you could take it down, but that would be kind of cool. And we could start with the team, the OTP volunteers, like Nisa is another volunteer. Like we could have our volunteers do that, but then I guess we could just also consider allowing anyone to create a profile for a candidate that they're supporting. So it's like, hey, if you have a candidate you really like, why can't you list them on OTP? Maybe we'd somehow down the road we'll need to have like some verification thing or call out that this was like a supporter created profile, but that would be super cool. The other thing that I would love to see is maybe like an ask me anything kind of ability to interact with the people. So like in this example, let's go back to the screen share. So I say, hey, I'm on OTP and, I'm like, wow, this Liam O'Mara, he's a really cool dude. He sounds really compelling. I watch his video. But what if I want to ask him like, hey, man, what's your take on the current stimulus debate? Or what's your take on the minimum wage versus universal basic income? Like, it would be kind of nice to have a way to kind of have a more engaged dialogue. And then for other people to benefit from that conversation, like an AMA.
That kind of reminds me, remember when we did AMA a long time ago?
We did.
And I think we had a feature where you could ask a question to anybody. And it could kind of be like public. And so it was a way to get people to engage with the site. So you could imagine like something like that.
Yeah. How did that work? Remind me, Ian.
So you could say there was just somebody that you wanted to ask a question of. Right. You could. They didn't have to come and sign up.
Oh.
You could just ask them a question.
Yeah.
Say, hey, this is for whoever.
Right.
Ask a question.
So that could be like on the supporter profile page. We could have a section which is ask a candidate anything, and then they could, if they're already on OTP, it would show up in both places. But if they're not, maybe it just tags them on Twitter or something.
Yeah.
But that would be another way to pull people in. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, it's an interesting notion, actually. I'm finding myself thinking about it, like, not only from the perspective of trying to entice those candidates to respond and there being meaningful dialogue, but also from the perspective of just understanding the questions that other people can kind of raise awareness about potential issues, right? So, like, I almost think of it like a Stack Overflow for politics. Where you would be hoping to get an answer from the politician involved, but you might also just start a dialogue, right? Like, hey, I'm curious, what is this UBI thing? Mr. Andrew Yang, what's your perspective on getting into effect? And then other people could chime in and either ask the same question, vote it up, or he doesn't like that question. It's such a no-brainer. Just do it.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, where the notion of voting it up, like if you asked Joe Biden or whoever, hey, what's your take on this? And then enough people voted it up, then we could probably on the OTP side reach out to the person being asked and say, if 150 people really want to hear the answer to this. So Blake has a point, which is like, well, maybe if the supporter created profile is not public till the person claims it. That would be another angle. That would be the safest one from a candidate control point of view. The risk, of course, is that you would have supporters create profiles that just never got claimed. So maybe what we would do is have like some indication that this is a supporter created thing, or it's a little bit lighter weight. It doesn't have maybe as much decorations as a candidate kind of claimed version.
Well, there's one other thing that this made me think of, like, say, like city council. You kind of want to know when I'm voting, I want to know all the candidates for that particular race. Not just the one that happened to sign up at OTP. So these automatically created profiles. There could be actually two kinds. One where there's supporters who are coming and saying, yes, I want to hear from this person here. And the other, maybe we create just to give a kind of overview of the race that you're interested in.
Yeah, that's a good point. So in our example with old Liam, let's say you kind of are intrigued by Liam, but you may want to know, well, who else is running for the House in the same district? And today, I think you could go to Ballotopedia and a few other places, but maybe OTP could say there's an option. You're looking at anyone, you can say, well, see who else is running in this district. And maybe it's just a very like anyone, it's kind of like open source, like people can add, help us edit it. But that would be nice. I mean, that and ultimately, like, it kind of leads me to three different models that I think we talked as a team about. And we're always kind of like thinking about, okay, well, is it one of these three or some combination? Like there's the Yelp model, which is, this is a directory. It has everything, local candidates there for you to learn about. That's it. That's what it does. It's comprehensive. It's searchable. It's browsable. It's sortable. Another model is like the YouTube model, where the candidates push out new content almost like a channel, and they can post stuff there, and then you can be alerted and follow it if you want. And then the third model is something that's way more interactive between the supporters and the candidates. Or Ian, you were starting to go into the supporter interaction too.
Yeah.
Or Sam, where you're like, hey, maybe just people just talk about UBI. And I don't think that we have to pick one of these lanes, but they are different themes and they might complement each other. But yeah, what do you guys think? Where's your head at these days in terms of what do you think will be the biggest needle mover?
Biggest needle? I mean, that's the hardest question to answer.
Yeah.
If we knew that, gosh, if only. I mean, I think just figuring out where people want to engage, and one of the I feel like one of the problems we have now is that we're a new platform, and so if we're doing anything like a marketplace or something like that, these things are hard to start. So I guess stepping back and seeing where are people engaging, and if people want to have conversations around topics, maybe. But the problem with that is that, like, there's already Twitter for that, right? So
yeah,
it's like we don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Yelp for local candidates is probably the most unique thing right now, and those other features are not off the table because they would enhance the Yelp experience, but we don't hang our hat on it. I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, it takes me back to asking the question about needle mover is interesting, because then I actually find myself echoing what you said, Tom, where I'm not too concerned about really moving the needle per se, as much as I am just even impacting one person's candidacy, right?
Yeah.
Letting one person enter this race and doing something to amplify their message, to me, seems valuable. And then that leads me to just the fact that every time I vote in a local election, I get this pamphlet, right, that's sent out to me in the mail. And it has like a short paragraph about the person and a picture. And that's largely what my vote in these local elections is based on. And so I think the biggest thing I can hope that we can improve is that process, to where instead of using that little pamphlet that barely has information, if I could look at a longer form description of a candidate with richer media like video, with question and answers, and just kind of get a much better representation for where that person stands, it lets my vote be that much more effective, and it gets us away from this crazy bipartisan scenario we're in, where I kind of just go, oh, okay, Democrat, I'm going this route, right? Which is not right to do, particularly in local elections, where that person is going to influence policies that have a day-to-day effect on my family and our daily life. So I just see us replacing that little brochure and have, much richer information that's available for people to consume easily.
This has been a question that I've had for a while. Like this, I feel like there's sites out there that do that, but I think they're probably like maybe if if you go to church, like maybe there's somewhere your church might send you to, like, here, look at this to figure out who to vote for, or your union or whatever, right? Like, I think all those things actually, they're probably pretty partisan in, except for the ones sent out by the local government or whatnot. Like, could we fill a niche where we're the kind of nonpartisan piece of the version of that?
I think there's something.
I'm kind of curious what the landscape is.
Yeah, I mean, you could learn a lot about a candidate. One thing I found is that if you are interested in a candidate, you can learn a lot about them by going to their website. But it's harder to compare across candidates. You basically go to one person's site and you're like, okay, I'm going to get their life story and all this stuff and the cool video and blah, blah, blah. But then you're not in like comparison shopping mode, which is, I think, what we're trying to support. Because ultimately, while we are all kind of yang and supporters of progressive kind of reform, I think what we really, for OTP, what we want is competition. And we want as many voices heard and, and voters having as many choices as possible. So if we made that comparison shopping experience easier, like to Sam's point about the pamphlet, like what if it were an interactive, living, breathing pamphlet that you could kind of engage with and ask questions and get answers, and you could kind of track people over time, and you're not just, sometimes those pamphlets, like you literally look at it with the ballots in front of you, and you're just like, okay, yeah, this one looks good. And I think there's probably a place for a more kind of contemplative and thoughtful relationship building between supporters and local candidates. That the thing I do worry about is like, how many people are going to be that engaged? Like, I think there was a statistic that like in New York City, 80% of residents do not vote in the local elections. And so part of me worries a little bit, like, are we building this for like the 3%, for that 20% that give a damn? But maybe that's okay.
Why aren't people engaging? Maybe that's where we go in.
That's a fair point.
People don't engage probably because they feel like it doesn't matter. And maybe we can show how it can matter, or give them the tools to understand exactly what's going on in the local government.
Yeah,
I think about like why people don't vote in those elections, and I can think of through some circumstances. One is they're just less aware of them. There's less general publicity around them. Two is there's less candidates. Oftentimes there's these positions that are ran for where there's only one person running for, county sheriff or something like that, right? So you don't feel like you even have an impact. And the other is I think people just don't know the influence that they could have. They don't realize that you demonstrated, where people are winning these elections by hundreds of votes. I mean, that right there is like, wow, you should really be motivated to participate, because you can really shift the tide of your local policy. So I wonder if the angle we could, again, I just wonder if it's a matter of finding a way to promote engagement through making this information easily accessible, right? And maybe it's something where like a supporter could nominate or send information to a group of friends to say, or neighbors, for instance, right? Like, hey, neighbors, I want to tell you about this person who's running for election in this area. And right now you could do that, but you'd have to draft the email yourself, or you'd have to go walk by and put your mask on and go talk to people. That's challenging. We can make it easy, single click. Hey, let me tell you about this candidate, and thereby, get them clicking through and consuming the information. So kind of that viral growth strategy, but for local elections.
Yeah, one of the key things for that to work, in my opinion, is that the OTP profile will need to offer unique value that they can't get from the candidate website. Because, if you support Liam, like right now, you'd probably want to just share the link to Liam's website, not his OTP profile. But if the OTP profile were interactive and it had to ask me anything and it had sort of like ongoing updates and maybe it pulled in his latest Twitter, content and stuff like that, then I think that OTP profile for a voter might be more useful than their kind of Wix website.
All right, I've come up with a killer idea.
All right, here we go.
Yep, voting recommendations based on your Twitter. So you're a voter.
Oh,
you come to of the people, and you log in with Twitter, and so I share my Twitter activity with OTP, and then we can go in and say, hey, based on your activity on Twitter, here's what we recommend you vote for.
That's pretty cool.
And we could also vet the candidates that way. So they sign up, make a candidate profile, give us their Twitter handle, and they can kind of say what they say. We could give them like a Pinocchio rating, like here's what you do on Twitter versus here's what I don't know if that's actually valuable, but that first one where that could actually be a killer feature around election season. Think about it, like you're trying to figure out who to vote for. It's a sea of names, and how can I figure this out?
Yeah, I love that idea because I know we had talked about in the past supporters like answering 100 questions about what policies.
That's what I was thinking this would replace. Like, remember when you would sign up for a site and be like, it's a music site. Who do you like? It's like, you don't have to do that. You ought to do that on Twitter.
Yeah. And maybe if for those who don't have Twitter, they can also do it the old-fashioned way, and fill out a questionnaire. Well, I'm excited, man. I think for those of you who are listening, please go ahead and check out otherpeople.us. And if you want to support this effort, we have a link to our Patreon. It's under the call to action, accelerate this project. We're planning on kind of plugging away at this for a while. And, our mission is to help more candidates get discovered and become choices for voters and maybe elevate some names that you wouldn't normally see that are really grassroots and do that at that local level where it could be the difference between winning and losing is just like 10 more supporters. So any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm looking forward to getting the vaccine.
Seriously.
Don't know when that's going to be.
Here's what success looks like in when I just had this idea in what success might look like. The day that like a local government sends us a note and says, hey, instead of distributing this pamphlet, we'd love to just distribute this content via your website. Like, how can we use OTP as a replacement for this voter pamphlets that we send out?
I think that's great, Sam, because I do want to be, nonpartisan. Like, we just want to put out good information, and that could be that sounds like a decent barometer for success there.
Yeah, and it's just local governments are going to struggle to be digital. We already know that. They have a hard time, hiring talent and building digital systems. So we're building one that maybe can help those local governments provide like you said, a nonpartisan, browse or digital version of that brochure app. Because arguably brochure app, see, it's not even an app. That brochure needs to be upgraded, right? And we can help them do that.
I was just talking to a friend of mine, Dawn, who's a UX researcher, yesterday about OTP because she might volunteer, and she was saying her daughter spends a ton of time manually building voter guides for her friends. And that's another angle, which is like, well, if you do, let's say you care deeply about renewable energy and that's your thing, and you're willing to produce voter guides for any local election based on like those key issues, and you're going to do the homework, that could be a type of user for OTP that is highly motivated and probably savvy, but wants access to tools that we could build. So yeah, I agree with both of you guys in terms of like this voter guide angle. So let's keep plugging away. And I have a feeling at some point we're gonna land on something that will be like a standard, and people will maybe then at that point we'll have to have a full-time team. But for now, I think we can keep kind of going in our discovery mode. So with that, I will just say thank you to all our Patreon supporters who've helped get this project along. And let's give another shout out to the candidates who are on OTP in the spirit of increasing awareness, since these wonderful folks decided to create a profile. So if you go to candidates, Alan Lee, welcome, our newest OTP candidate. Fry Sandlin, running for mayor of Jacksonville, Florida. Sheridan Lund, running for Congress in New Mexico. Andrew Legnani, House of Reps, Connecticut. Austin Searle, U.S. Senate. I think Austin is in Montana. Yeah. Liam O'Mara, who I think is in California, running for the House. Allie Dalsimer, who is running in Virginia's 11th district. Erica Rhodes, running in LA for Congress. Eric Storzand, Connecticut. Amy Washburn, Wisconsin. Yenny DeRoche is running for city council in Worcester, Massachusetts. Ryan Stark is running for, we have to make that easier, Ian. These zip codes are terrible.
Yeah.
Where the hell is Ryan? Hold on, I'm gonna have to let's see. Let's see. We test. Click on this link.
Look at the zip code. He knows where it is. It's all in there.
Yeah, right. Where the hell are you, Ryan? Well, it's not even clear on his own website. He grew up in Connecticut, but I don't think that's where he's from. Texas?
Phoenix, Arizona is what I see for that zip code.
All right. There you go. So good thing we have Sam with using the Google machine. Then we have Adriana Aviles running for New York City District Council District 19. The only female Latina to run in that district. So good luck, Adriana. So Did
we lose Tom, Sam?
I think we did. Tom is present on my screen.
All right.
You have audio?
Oh, there. Okay. He's back.
I was just saying congrats to both of you for getting to 13 candidates. I know a few weeks ago we were like stuck at 7, and including me. So it was like, okay, so it's really 6. So now we're at 13 for reals. And hopefully we'll get to 25 soon, and we'll just keep adding. I think that's one of the key things will be making those candidate profiles super useful. So like maybe our competition should be their website. Like it needs to be more useful to a voter than the Wix website. And then I love the idea of this like voter guide thing. It's sort of like almost like lists or user generated kind of, combos or playlists of candidates or some way to for them to add.
What was that Yably feature? Top 10 or so?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Good memories.
Bringing it back. Just find the code for it. We'll bring it right
What
back.
about the Ask Me Anything? Don't we have the code for that? All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I know you guys are busy with family, and but I'm glad we were able to give the Nerds for Humanity and OTP supporters some new info. It's actually there's a quick question. Did you say there's a feature where other candidates will be suggested to you based on yeah, so that's Ian's idea
Oh,
that he
it's
just came up
already
with.
being like begged for. Okay.
Kind of like how Spotify would suggest songs. Yes,
Yeah.
that's pretty much exactly what Ian's thinking about. I guess the
It's vaporware right now.
yeah,
Does not
you'd have
exist
to.
yet.
Maybe there is some off the shelf API where you can compare two Twitter profiles and see the overlap. I bet, and then we can have right.
Yeah, we'd come up with some.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, with that, happy Saturday. Have a great weekend. And thanks for all your help saving democracy, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Goodbye, nerds.